You ever notice how breakups don't just end with the person you were with? No, they always have these messy little aftershocks that drag in other people. Friends, siblings, and if you're really unlucky, their mother. And let me tell you, my ex's mother. Phew. She was the kind of woman who believed her son could do no wrong, even when he was actively doing wrong. But let's back it up. Let's start at the beginning. My ex and I had been together for almost 3 years, long enough that I really thought it was going somewhere. I mean, we were engaged. We were planning a wedding. I had the Pinterest boards, the saved dresses, the guest list in progress. And at one point, I actually believed he loved me enough to go through with it. But here's the thing. People can fake love a lot longer than you think, until they don't bother anymore. With my ex, it started small. Little lies, tiny cracks in the trust, things that didn't quite add up. Like he'd say he was working late, but the office would post pictures of a team dinner on Instagram, and there he was, drink in hand, grinning next to someone who definitely wasn't me. Or he'd forget to call when he said he would, then act annoyed when I asked where he was. I tried to brush it off at first. You don't want to believe the worst about someone you've given your heart to. I kept telling myself, he's stressed, he's busy, weddings are a lot, it's fine. But then I started finding receipts, literal receipts. Dinner for two at restaurants I'd never been to with him. A bar tab from a place across town. Late at night, with drinks I don't even like. One time, a hotel charge. And when I confronted him, oh, he had excuses ready. Oh, that dinner? Yeah, it was just with a coworker. She's married. Totally professional. The hotel? Oh, that was for a buddy. I covered it because his card got declined. You know how I am, always helping people. The gaslighting was intense. He had a slick answer for everything, and part of me wanted so badly to believe him, because believing meant I didn't have to admit my relationship was a lie. But deep down, I knew. The final straw came one night when he stumbled home drunk at 3 a.m, reeking of perfume that wasn't mine. He didn't even bother to shower first, just collapsed into bed like nothing was wrong. And when I confronted him the next morning, he laughed. God, you're so paranoid. Do you ever stop? You're exhausting. Exhausting. That's what he called me. So yeah, I ended it. I packed up my stuff. I gave him back the ring, and I told him we were done. And you'd think that would be the end, right? Wrong. That was just the opening act. Because the minute I walked away from him, his mother decided she needed to get involved. Now, let me paint you a picture of this woman. She was one of those Facebook moms. You know, the type, lives for drama, posts chain messages about angels protecting the family, like, and share if you love your son kind of posts. And she worshipped her son, worshipped him. In her eyes, he was a prince, the golden boy who could do no wrong. So when she found out I broke off the engagement, she lost her mind. I didn't hear it from her directly at first. I heard it from friends. Screenshots started rolling in. And there it was, a full-on Facebook rant. She posted this long status, public, by the way, for the whole world to see. It said, and I quote, "It's so sad when women don't know how to treat a good man. My son is loyal, hardworking, and deserves the world. Some people just don't appreciate what they have. Some people are selfish, immature, and will end up old and alone. God don't like ugly." Oh, and she tagged me in it. Yeah, full name. No shame. I sat there staring at my phone, my jaw hanging open. I couldn't believe a grown woman, was acting like this online. Like, lady, your son cheats, lies, gaslights, and comes home smelling like another woman. But sure, I'm the selfish one. At first, I thought, whatever. Let her scream into the void. Everyone knows what kind of guy her son really is. But then she started escalating. She went into the comments section, replying to anyone who agreed with me. If someone dared say, maybe it wasn't meant to be, she'd rip into them. She called me names. Ungrateful. Trash. Bitter. And my personal favorite, she'll never do better than my son. Men like him don't come around often. She blew it. I laughed when I read that. I really did, because the only thing rare about him was how consistently he managed to disappoint me. Still, it stung. Not because I cared about her opinion, but because it was humiliating. She was dragging me in front of everyone we knew, family, mutual friends, co-workers who'd been invited to the wedding. It felt like I was the villain in some story she'd written, and everyone was watching. And then, as if her ranting online wasn't enough, she started calling me. The first voicemail was calm, at least at the beginning. I just want to understand why you would do this to my son. He's devastated. He's a good man. You owe him loyalty. But then her tone shifted. Honestly, I don't know how you live with yourself. You're going to regret this. You're going to wake up one day and realize you threw away the best thing that ever happened to you. Click. I didn't call back. I didn't respond. But she kept going. Voicemail after voicemail, each nastier than the last. One of them, she actually screamed into the phone. You're disgusting. You're a pathetic excuse for a woman. You'll be sorry. I remember sitting on my couch after listening to that one, shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. And that's when something inside me shifted. See, I could have ignored her. I could have blocked her and moved on. But no, she wanted to drag me through the mud. She wanted to call me pathetic. Fine, two can play that game. And that's when the idea hit me. The voicemails. What if I flipped it? What if I gave her the voicemails? But instead of screaming, instead of insults, I'd do it differently. Calm. Clear. Cutting. I'd leave her a list. Every reason why I left her precious son. Every lie he told. Every receipt I found. Every moment he made me feel like I was losing my mind. And then I'd remind her exactly who he learned it from. I smiled to myself as I thought about it, because this wasn't just about revenge. This was about reclaiming my voice. So, the next time she called me a name on Facebook, the next time she left me a nasty voicemail, I picked up my phone. I dialed her number, and when the line went to voicemail, I pressed record. Hey, since you seem so confused about why I left your son, let me help you out. Let's start with the fact that he can't keep it in his pants. That's reason number one. And, oh, I didn't stop there. When I hung up after that first recorded line, the one where I set the tone with reason number one, he can't keep it in his pants, something shifted. It wasn't dramatic. There were no fireworks, no cinematic montage. It was just me, my phone, and the quiet satisfaction of finally saying what I'd been swallowing for months. It felt good. That's the honest thing I want to tell you right away. Revenge, even petty revenge, often tastes bitter. But this felt like lemon on a cut, sharp, cleansing. Every time I spoke, another splinter of the hurt came out. I didn't realize I'd been holding all of that poison in my throat until I released it, one voicemail at a time. The first message was blunt. The second one felt cleaner, more surgical. Hi, it's me again. Reason 2, he lied about the ring deposit. Remember that story where he said he lost the deposit and we'd have to push the date back? That wasn't a deposit he lost. That was a lie so he could sleep around for another month without you noticing. You don't even remember asking him if the payment went through? Classic. I left it slow, businesslike. I wasn't screaming, I wasn't begging. I was documenting. It was like writing a police report, except the crime was emotional abuse. I read receipts I'd kept, quoted dates, mentioned small things he had brushed off as nothing. When I referenced specifics, I could practically feel the shame like a draft on the other end of the line. Not because she heard them, and for a while, she didn't, but because the words existed now in the universe. They weren't just in my head anymore. The voicemails piled up into a stack of truth. Some were angry. Some were cuttingly calm. Most were a mix, sharp with a little smile I could hear in my head. Reason 3, remember when he told everyone at that holiday that he was between jobs but mysteriously had enough money to buy new leather boots and take late-night Ubers? I found the Venmo receipts. You raised a man who believes reputation matters more than honesty. Reason 4, the way he belittled your daughter last summer, saying she needed to learn her place while you tried to teach her kindness. I can still hear him laugh. That voice didn't just appear overnight. You taught him to laugh at other people. Yes, I said that last line out loud, clear as a bell. It was cruel. Maybe it was necessary. There was strategy to it, too. I didn't just rant. I curated. I alternated tone. One voicemail would be cold, clinical, a litany of facts and dates. The next would cut to the emotional. Short stories of the nights I cried into the bath because he'd been nowhere to be found. Small humiliations in front of friends. The night he mocked my ambition in front of his mother, and then smilingly offered to take care of me like I couldn't take care of myself. I remember leaving one at midnight, drunk on sorrow and the kind of righteous fury that keeps you up. I pressed record and said, in a voice that somehow sounded steadier than I felt, Reason 5, you know how you taught him to defend himself no matter what. You taught him to avoid accountability. He learned to gaslight before he learned to apologize. I'm not the only person who will say it now. I could hear my own voice echoing back in the voicemail playback. It felt like a confession and an indictment in one. Again, I wasn't shouting. I was listing. I was making a map. And the map was for her. There was a practical reason I did this in lists. When you're dealing with narcissism, and this family had it stitched into the seams, facts matter. Narcissists and their enablers thrive on fog. She's sensitive. It's an exaggeration. You don't understand how hard he works. Facts break fog. So I made sure every voicemail had a line that could be verified if someone wanted to look. Dates, receipts, snippets of conversation I'd saved, the names of places. I wanted the truth to have structure. After voicemail number 6, I noticed something. Not from her, at least not directly, but from the way I spoke when I left messages. The tone altered from raw rage to a colder, smarter texture. I'd rehearsed what to say. I loved the precision of it. It became almost professional. I recorded, listened, re-recorded until the cadence was right. I wanted my voice to carry authority. In one message, I even used sarcasm for effect. Reason 7, your son's talent for sudden amnesia. He conveniently forgets dates, birthdays, and promises, except when it's time to take credit for gifts or show up for photographs. You must be very proud. I left that with a slow, almost theatrical chuckle, because there's a special kind of humiliation in making the other person realize they look silly to everyone who's listening. As days passed, I found reasons everywhere. Sometimes it was petty, trivial things, the way he put his feet up on my coffee table after I asked him not to, the way he criticized my laughter. Sometimes it was devastating. Infidelity details, the moments where he deliberately embarrassed me in front of friends to feel dominant. Once, I recorded a line about his temper while narrating the scene. Reason 11, the night he smashed his phone because I asked him to apologize and then blamed me for pushing him to do it. He hit walls more gently than he hit me. You taught him to hide his fists behind theatrics. When I said that, my throat tightened. It was harder to say those words than to say he cheated or he lied. But I said them out loud into the tiny electric box that would carry the accusation to the woman who'd raised him. Between voicemails, I got texts from friends, from mutual acquaintances. A few were supportive. A few were shocked. One friend texted, "Girl, that was savage. I'm proud of you." Another, who'd always been neutral, wrote, "Be careful. This could blow up." There's always that voice of caution. There's always that shadow of consequence. And consequences did show up in little delicious ways. One morning I left a message that began softly, almost conversational. "Hey, it's me. Reason 13, the way he laughed when your dog died. You said he didn't realize, but he did. He loved the attention of grieving people. He learned that from being the center of every conversation in your house." I hung up and expected nothing. 10 minutes later, my ex called. I let it ring. He left a voicemail. Anger and disbelief strangled together. "What the hell are you doing? Who do you think you are? You're out of line. You can't just," he sputtered. "You're ruining things." I didn't answer. Instead, I replayed my own message and smiled. He called again an hour later, this time furious and composed. He said his mother had called him as well, upset and embarrassed. His words were practical, the way people get when they're trying to clean up someone else's mess. "You have to stop this. Mom is calling my sister. She's calling my work. People are talking. You're making this worse," he said, like I roped him into being the reasonable party protecting his familial reputation. "Worse for whom?" I asked, as if it was a neutral question. "For everyone," he said. "For me. For you. For you. For me." The pronouns were telling. I could hear his breath hitch. "Please," he said finally, "just stop. Call her and apologize. Tell her you were emotional. Tell her you regret it. Tell her I regret it." I almost laughed. The idea of phrasing the truth as regret, of apologizing for telling the facts, felt absurd. "You want me to lie," I said. "You want me to lie to your mother so she'll get off my back. I thought you were better than that." He was silent for a while. Then he said, quiet and small, "We can talk. We can fix this. Just come over." No, that was always the trap. He said, "We can fix this," like it had been easy to fix in the past. I knew exactly where come over led, me apologizing, us negotiating another tiny contract of deceit so he could have his dignity and I could keep my sanity. I wasn't going to do that. "Don't call me again," I said, and then I hung up. There's a strange power in silence after you've drawn a line. The voicemails continued. I added a new subgenre. I narrated small, private incidents and then delivered a final line. That's why I left. That phrase became my mic drop. It was catharsis in 6 syllables. Reason 16. The morning after my promotion, when you told me I'd never be happy because I cared too much, that was you biting at me because I finally didn't need your approval. That was you resenting my success. That's why I left. Reason 19. He calls women crazy when they tell him they want more time with him. Then he laughs about it later with his friends. You taught him to dismiss feelings by ridiculing them. That's why I left. Each voicemail felt like moving furniture in my house of memory. I pulled out things that had been shoved under beds and into closets. I showed them into the light. I even cataloged patterns. How he apologized quickly with elaborate gifts instead of changing behavior. How he shifted blame with a smile. How his mother's subtle comments had trained him to perform contrition rather than embody it. Between messages, I started talking to my friends more. I asked them to be witnesses to my truth. One friend, Jess, recorded an audio note back to me after hearing one voicemail. She said, "You sound different. You sound lighter. You sound free." That meant something. Maybe it meant I was finally telling my story on my terms. The mother's responses at first were the practiced fury of an aggrieved defender. She called me names in voicemail replies that were clipped and labored, carefully written as if she were dictating a press release. "You are cruel for attacking a son. How could you?" she'd say in carefully controlled bursts. "You are bitter and unstable." But then she started to call more. She would ring my line, and when I didn't pick up, leave a message that was less composed, more frayed. "I don't understand why you hate him," she said in one shaky voicemail. "We raised him better than this. You must have done something to him. I'm so disappointed." It was an odd inversion, the mother suggesting I had damaged him. I found that line particularly galling, both because it was double-down gaslighting and because it was the exact sort of narrative that had let so many of his behaviors slide for years. Suddenly, everything I'd cataloged made sense. She didn't want to believe he was at fault because accepting that would mean admitting she'd missed things as a parent. After a few days of this, the harassment reached a new level. The mother found friends who were willing to post on her behalf, people who'd never met me but saw the status and chimed in with the human chorus of outrage. That's when I decided to escalate the voicemails not by volume, but by intimacy. I started recording from places I knew would make the messages hit differently. In my car on a rainy night, voice tinny and nostalgic. In the kitchen making coffee at 6 a.m., voice soft and awake. In the shower, raw and unedited. I wanted the voicemails to sound human, to carry not just facts, but the cadence of my life being interrupted. I remember sitting in my car, once, the windshield fogged with condensation, and leaving a message that felt like a confession and a condemnation. Reason 26. He told me once, right after we fought, that people are disposable if they aren't useful. He didn't mean it as theory. He meant it as a rule. You raise someone who thinks people have expiration dates. That's where his cruelty came from, and that's why I left. After that one, I cried. It wasn't theatrical. It was small tears, as if the line letting go had finally snapped. You might wonder, did I ever worry this would land me in trouble? That leaving so many messages, calling someone repetitively, might be seen as harassment? Yes, I did. There were nights I deleted messages before they were sent. There were mornings when I listened to myself and wondered if I'd gone too far. But the decisive thing that kept me calling was how the messages unburdened me. Every voicemail was a little surgical operation on my wounded self. I removed the infection and wrapped the wound. Then something interesting happened. Her number stopped connecting at odd hours. Calls went straight to silence. I'd leave a voicemail, wait for the inevitable rebuttal, and instead received the automatic note. The number you are trying to reach is not accepting calls. A sense of amusement bloomed in me. Maybe she'd blocked me. Maybe she'd burned the bridge. Maybe she'd told her son, and the two of them decided to carve me out of their lives like a tumor. But she still had friends, and friends started to ask. At a birthday party for a mutual acquaintance, the mother approached me from across the room. She didn't look like she had the energy to yell, so she spat her words quietly, sharp as a razor. "You should stop. You are making more enemies than friends," she said. "I'm not here to make friends," I answered softly. "I'm here to live my life." She sneered, mouthing some excuse about my behavioral issues, and turned away. The arrogance was the same as always. The main difference was there were fewer people crowding around to take her side. The ex tried to drag me into a conversation once, at a mutual friend's coffee catch-up. He sat there, jaws tight, trying to make himself the calm bridge. He said, "Can't we just have this conversation privately? This isn't how adults handle things. Adults don't gaslight and then demand silence." I said, "You think your mother can call someone names in a public forum and then ask me to be quiet?" His face reddened. He said, "You're making this personal." I said, "It's been personal for 3 years. I'm finally returning the favor." I'll be honest, hearing him try to position himself as a wounded party was almost laughable. Part of me wanted to expose him publicly then and there, to tell everyone in that tiny cafe what I'd found. But I didn't. I wanted my moments to land on their own rhythm, not in a burst of ego. I wanted the slow drip, not the flood. One of the cruelly satisfying moments came from something so small it almost felt absurd. A mutual friend, someone who'd been invited to the wedding and who'd always been polite to my ex's family, texted me a voice note. She said, voice tight with that barely contained giggle that people get when they're trying not to be vicious. "So your voicemails?" I played one for my boyfriend, and he almost spit out his coffee. He said, "Wow, she's not wrong. People are talking. I think she got under their skin." "Good." I texted back. That was the point. I started to notice other small, fun ripples. A woman who had been always friendly to the mother stopped greeting her with the same easy warmth. An aunt who'd usually take the mother's side now gave me a furtive thumbs up across the room. Small betrayals turned into small solidarity. There were nights when I'd listen back to old voicemails and feel guilty. I wasn't proud of all of them. Some were petty, some were mean. But I never denied that I had been hurt in ways that were real. And sometimes saying he cheated didn't carry the weight. Listing each instance of manipulation did. The mother never called the police. She didn't leave angry voicemails that threatened legal action. She simply blocked the line after a few days. I remember hearing the click of the phone when it went to that cold, sterile message. "The number you are trying to reach is not accepting calls." And I had this strange sensation, a little victory, sunlight cutting through fog. She blocked me. She cut off the noise. I had been working so hard to break down her fog that the act of being blocked felt like a win and a loss at once. A win because she couldn't reply because her most weaponized tool, nagging, public shaming, calling me bitter, was muted. A loss because part of me wanted to hear the wobble, the gasp, the tiny admission that she finally heard something she didn't like. But within hours of being blocked, an even better thing happened. Her son, my ex, didn't get over it. He called mutual friends multiple times, trying to piece together what I'd said, asking them to remind him. He texted me angrily, pleadingly, sometimes just with one word. Stop. I didn't respond. When he cornered me, once outside a grocery store, like some cliché of an ex in a rom-com gone sour, he looked up close and raw. Why can't you let it go? He demanded. Why are you doing this to me? I met his eyes and didn't flinch. Because you did this to me. The difference is I said it out loud. You did it in private and expected forgiveness. He tried the old playbook. Charm first, guilt second. You made a huge mistake. We can go back. We can fix things. I'll go to counseling. I'll do anything. It's possible he meant it in that split-moment way cheaters do. The quick, seductive promise that sounds sincere simply because saying it is easier than changing. But something in the set of his jaw didn't match the words. His promises were curated to be the kind of promises that sound passive and safe. It's too late for that, I told him, and walked away. Him chasing wasn't part of my plan. I hadn't wanted to use him as spectacle, but seeing him uncomfortable, seeing him forced to reckon with his own actions because his mother's defenses around him had been pierced, that was a side effect I accepted. The voicemails eventually slowed. I didn't stop because I wanted bloodshed. I stopped because the reasons were mostly cataloged. There were only so many receipts, so many nights, so many little betrayals that a person could list before the story became repetition. The satisfaction didn't evaporate. It settled into a gentle, persistent warmth. And in the wake of our vocal skirmish, other things shifted. The man who once insisted everyone's loyalty be to him found himself isolated in a way I hadn't expected. His mother had been the main protagonist in his personal myth, and when I punctured that myth with facts, she retreated. The best revenge isn't always the loudest. Sometimes it's simply turning the lights on. Sometimes it's speaking your truth until the lies can't stand the exposure. And sometimes, most deliciously, the person who pushed and prodded and taught hurt ends up looking ridiculous when the truth gets its day in the sun. So, yeah, she blocked my number. He begged. Friends whispered. My phone buzzed with messages of shock and cheers. I felt lighter and weirdly free. That wasn't the end of the story, not by a long shot, but it was the end of the part where I needed to prove to myself I wasn't an accidental victim. I had a voice, and I used it. The rest of the story would be about what I did with that voice, how I reassembled my life, and whether the warmth of petty victory would last when the dust actually settled. But for now, for that chapter, the voicemails had done what they were meant to do. They were truth laid out in plain English. They were small artillery shells fired into the armor of denial, and they left a meaningful dent. When the silence hit, it was almost louder than the voicemails themselves. You know that feeling when you're used to the constant buzz of a refrigerator or an AC unit, and then suddenly it shuts off, and you realize you've been living with noise the whole time? That was me the first morning I woke up and realized my ex's mother had blocked me. No ping of rage-laced messages. No clipped voicemails dripping with sanctimony. Nothing. Just silence. And silence, ironically, is sometimes the clearest sign that you've struck the nerve you meant to strike. At first, I thought maybe she'd cave. Maybe she'd unblock me in a day, two at most, and come back swinging. That's what narcissists do. They thrive on having the last word. They need the last word. But the block held. And that made me wonder, was she retreating out of strategy or because she was rattled? I didn't have to wait long to find out because her son, my ex, picked up the slack. It was surreal. I was walking through the frozen food aisle, picking up pizza rolls like a normal human being, when I heard that all too familiar throat clear behind me. "We need to talk," he said. I turned slowly, box still in my hand. "Do we? You've gone too far. My mother can't even go on Facebook anymore without people asking questions. Do you know how humiliating this is?" I cocked my head, half amused. Humiliating for who? For her? Or for you? His jaw twitched. For both of us. "Funny," I said. I thought humiliation was a consequence, not a tragedy. The way he glared at me, I swear he wanted to throw that little plastic basket at my head. Instead, he lowered his voice, almost pleading. "Please, just stop. You've made your point. You don't have to keep going." And I admit it, I felt a dark little rush of satisfaction at that word. Please. The man who once called me too emotional for crying when he cheated, now begging me to stop telling the truth. Delicious. "Here's the thing," I told him. "I didn't start this. Your mother did, remember? She went online and called me names like she was a teenager. I'm just answering the call. You don't like the answers? That's not my problem." He looked like he wanted to say more, but instead he just muttered, "You're insane," and walked off toward the dairy section. I let him go. I had my pizza rolls and my dignity. He had a basket of shame. Fair trade. Here's where it got interesting. When you're with someone long enough, your friend groups braid together like roots. Some belong more to you, some more to them, but plenty hover in the messy middle. After the voicemail saga, those roots started to split. Jess, my ride or die, was firmly in my corner. She'd text me things like, "Girl, you're not crazy. You're finally saying the things we all saw but didn't say." But others, not so loyal. A guy named Mark, one of his drinking buddies, cornered me at a bar one night. "Why are you trying to ruin his life?" he asked, beer breath warm on my face. I sipped my gin and tonic before answering. "I'm not ruining it. I'm just narrating it." "He's not that bad," Mark insisted. "We all make mistakes." I laughed, sharp and humorless. Cheating, lying, gaslighting, calling people crazy until they believe it, that's not a mistake. That's a personality. Mark had no comeback for that, so he just muttered something about me being vindictive and stumbled back to the jukebox. And honestly, I was vindictive. I never pretended otherwise. But sometimes vindictiveness is just self-defense with better PR. Even though she blocked me, she couldn't resist making a final move. That's how people like her operate. They always want one last dagger. A week after the block, a mutual acquaintance texted me a screenshot. The mother had posted one of those vague, sanctimonious Facebook statuses. You know the type. Some people just don't know how to move on. Sad when bitterness consumes you and blinds you from love. Prayers up for those who need them. Oh, I laughed. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my coffee. Because if there's anything more pathetic than being called out directly, it's trying to passive-aggressively reclaim the narrative with a half-baked inspirational quote. I didn't respond. I didn't comment. I didn't even like it, ironically, Because the truth is, silence is sometimes the sharpest clapback. Everyone who read it already knew exactly who she was talking about. And the ones who knew the real story, they knew better. But let's not forget about him. My ex wasn't done trying to crawl back into control. He called me one night, late, 2 a.m., the kind of hour where nothing good happens. Against my better judgment, I picked up. "I can't sleep," he said, voice thick with self-pity. "I keep thinking about you." I rolled my eyes. "You're not thinking about me. You're thinking about yourself, and I'm just the easiest scapegoat." "No, it's different this time. I've been going to therapy. I'm trying to change." "Oh, did your therapist tell you to call your ex at 2 a.m. and whine?" Silence. Then softly, "I miss you." That should have hit me in the chest. Right? It used to. But this time, it barely grazed me. I'd heard, "I miss you" too many times after lies, after fights, after betrayals. The phrase had been drained of meaning. "Good luck with that," I said, and hung up. I stared at the phone for a long time after. Not because I was tempted, but because I realized the version of me who once would have melted at those words. She was gone. And good riddance. Inner reflection. I'd be lying if I said it was all clean satisfaction. There were nights I lay awake, wondering if I'd gone too far. Wondering if people would remember me, not as the one who survived a narcissist, but as the crazy ex who left voicemails. But then I'd think about the silence, the blocked number, the red face in the grocery store, the half-empty Facebook posts. And I knew I'd hit them where it hurt. Not with violence, not with lies, but with the one thing they couldn't handle, truth spoken out loud. The fallout wasn't tidy. Friendships cracked. Reputations wobbled. And me, I was still standing, maybe a little scorched, but freer than I'd been in years. And deep down, in the pettiest, darkest corner of my heart, I'll admit this, I enjoyed watching them squirm. You ever hear that saying, "Living well is the best revenge"? Yeah, I used to roll my eyes at it too. Felt like one of those Pinterest quotes people slap on pastel backgrounds. But after everything with my ex and his mother, I started realizing there's some truth in it. Not the sparkly, manifest your dreams kind. More like, watch me thrive while you choke on your own bitterness kind. And let me tell you, I wore that crown. Petty and proud. About 2 months after the voicemail saga, I landed a new job. Not just any job, a better one. Higher pay, better hours, an office with actual windows instead of those sad little cubicle dividers. I posted a picture of my desk on Instagram. Clean, fresh, sunlight pouring in, with a caption that just said, "New beginnings, seedling, no names, no shade, just vibes." Within a day, I had 3 mutual friends text me. "So, your ex's mom saw that post and told people you were flaunting. She said you're trying too hard to look happy." And I laughed so hard I almost spit out my coffee. Trying too hard to look happy? No, sweetheart. I wasn't trying. I was happy. That's the thing about narcissists. They can't stand when you move on without them. Happiness to them looks like betrayal. But of course, fate loves drama. I was out with some coworkers, celebrating the end of a brutal project. We'd picked this cute little Italian place downtown. Wine flowing, laughter bubbling, garlic bread everywhere. And guess who waddled in like she owned the joint? His mother. She spotted me instantly. Her face froze in this half smile, half sneer. She could have walked past. She could have ignored me. But no, she strutted right up to our table. "Well," she said, voice dripping with sugar, "don't you look cozy? New friends?" "Huh." I smiled sweetly. "Yep. Turns out people actually like me when I'm not being slandered on Facebook." Her smile cracked just a little. "You know, it's a shame you couldn't work things out with my son. He's really been struggling." "Oh, I'm sure he has," I said, lifting my glass. "Actions have consequences." The table went quiet. My coworkers just stared, wide-eyed. The mother sniffed, muttered something about immaturity, and stomped off toward her table. When she was gone, my coworker leaned over and whispered, "That was savage." And God, it felt good. The crowning moment, though, the birthday party. See, one of our mutual friends, poor guy stuck in the middle, decided to host a big group get-together. Everyone was invited, which meant me and my ex. I almost didn't go. But then I thought, why should I miss out on free cake just because they couldn't handle me? So I went. And the moment I walked in, I felt all eyes snap to me. My ex was there, sitting in the corner, nursing a beer like it was a lifeline. His mother? Not invited. Thank God. But the tension? Thick enough to cut with a butter knife. I decided then and there. I wasn't going to shrink. I was going to shine. I laughed louder. I told stories. I complimented people's outfits. I owned the room, not in a desperate way, but in a free way, and I could feel my ex's eyes burning into me from across the room. At one point, he finally got up and muttered, "You're really enjoying yourself, huh?" I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Yeah, I am. That's what happens when you're not chained to dead weight." He turned pale, then stormed outside for a smoke. My friend Jess whispered, "Girl, you're wearing the crown tonight." And she was right. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving, and every second of it was like twisting the knife in the people who thought they'd broken me. Here's the thing about narcissists. They always come back. Always. They circle like vultures, waiting for a crack, waiting for weakness. So I kept waiting for that one final call. The grand gesture. The dramatic monologue about love, regret, and second chances. But it never came. At first, I thought that was a loss. Like, did I not matter enough for them to try again? But then it hit me. The silence wasn't weakness. It was my win. Because sometimes the greatest revenge isn't loud. Sometimes it's watching them slink away, realizing they can't touch you anymore. Wearing the petty crown didn't mean I didn't hurt. Of course I did. Breakups are messy. Betrayals leave scars. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't carrying their shame on my back. I was free. Free to laugh. Free to breathe. Free to live without constantly defending myself against a toxic duo. And the best part? Knowing that somewhere out there, they were still talking about me. Still bitter. Still stewing. While I was out here building something new. That, right there, was the sweetest revenge. You know what's funny? If you told me a year ago that I'd be sitting here telling this story with a little smirk on my face instead of tears in my eyes, I would have called you crazy. Back then, it felt like my whole world had cracked open. Losing him, whatever. But losing my dignity at the hands of his mother's poison, that felt permanent. And yet, here I am. Not broken. Not even bent. Here's the thing nobody tells you about revenge. It doesn't solve everything. It doesn't magically erase the nights you cried into your pillow or the mornings you dragged yourself out of bed, wondering why you weren't enough. Petty victories feel good. Oh, They feel amazing in the moment, but they don't rewrite the past. And that's okay, because revenge isn't about fixing them. It's about reclaiming you. Every voicemail I left, every jab that made them squirm, every moment I laughed louder than they wanted me to, that wasn't just about payback. It was about reminding myself that I still had a voice, that they didn't get to stomp me out and walk away victorious. Now, do I regret it? Not one bit. Would I recommend it to everyone? Depends. Some people say the high road is nobler, cleaner, and maybe they're right. But me? I'm not ashamed of being messy. I'm not ashamed that my revenge wasn't some Hollywood masterpiece, but a string of petty little cuts that left scars on their pride. Because let's be honest, sometimes you need to let that pettiness out. Sometimes being the bigger person just means letting them trample you twice. And I was done being their doormat. As for my ex, honestly, he faded into the background like static noise. Oh, I'm sure he's still out there, blaming everyone but himself, playing the victim to whoever will listen. But he doesn't take up space in my chest anymore. He doesn't get free rent in my head. And that's the ultimate revenge. Because while he's still probably nursing his ego and letting his mother fight his battles, I'm living, and living well. And his mother, let's just say, I gave her the starring role in my voicemail saga, and I don't regret a single word. She wanted to call me names online? Fine. I gave her an itemized list of why her son is the way he is. Petty? Sure. Accurate? Absolutely. And the fact that she blocked me? That's a trophy on my shelf. Because if I was irrelevant, if I didn't hit a nerve, she wouldn't have bothered. Blocking me was her way of admitting defeat. So, yeah, this is me. The girl who turned heartbreak into a petty little masterpiece. The one who didn't choose the high road, but chose the real road. Messy, loud, satisfying. And you know what? I'd do it all again. If you've made it this far, thanks for listening to my twisted little therapy session. Maybe you've been there too, burned by someone, blamed by someone else, and left wondering if you'd ever stand tall again. Let this be your reminder. You can, whether you take the high road, the petty road, or somewhere in between, you can. And hey, if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and share your own revenge tales in the comments. Because trust me, there's nothing better than turning pain into power.